Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too, as we continue to live, laugh, love, learn, linger, and live the life we love. Oh, Wednesday, my bad joke day. This guy goes to a doctor, specialist in his field, to ask for the diagnosis. Doctor says, very, very, very severe condition. It'll be $500 for that. He says, well, I don't have any money to pay you. He says, why did you come to me? He says, well, when it comes to my health, money is no object. All right, so we've been talking about the archetypes this week, and now this is the warrior, the action-oriented part of yourself. So has your warrior found a throne that's worthy to be loyal to? If you're going to give your life for the cause, it has to be a transpersonal end that serves the good of the community. So my question to you is, where do you discipline yourself? And how does that help you carry out the dictates of your higher self, or your king or your queen, or the inner self, or the real you, or your better angels, or whatever word you want? That's the action-oriented part of yourself. And that leads us right into dealing with clutter. I've already said you'll be surprised how quickly this becomes possible once you put your mind to it. But you got to work on your own clutter first and realize understand what the downside of keeping that stuff is, rather than whatever reason you're justifying holding on to it. And then your warrior is the one who gets her ass in gear, and does something about it. All right, I always acknowledge that everything I'm talking about is best understood through the yogic metaphor. But of course, because it's a metaphor, we can change the symbol and see it in many, many different ways as it shapeshifts. But yoga in general is concerned with the betterment of each human being, so it can be viewed as a universal culture. I don't want to say universal religion, because religion is often connected to belief that divides instead of the common human thread that unites us. You don't need any special paraphernalia to do yoga. It only requires the will to do it. You only need special space, just something that's the length of your body where you can lie down. That's it. And through my teaching, I've learned to try to correct the gross misperceptions of yoga from the old yogis are fakirs who lie on beds of nails and eat glass and can not die if snake venom goes into them, all that kind of stuff. And I've done my part, as have many others, thousands of others. So I'm delighted to see in a certain way how the last 50 years has brought yoga into the mainstream culture, and to the hundreds of thousands of people who've helped popularize it, even though at the beginning the practice seems to only be with the postures, but later on it becomes the wisdom insight into how to live a majestic life as a human being. And it's one part in the ongoing evolutionary lurch of educating and uplifting all humanity, even though that takes decades. And if we're talking planetary, 100 years, 200 years, we'll see. It's the march of time. So there are many forms of yoga, and each spiritual tradition has its own way of saying exactly what it thinks yoga is and how it affects the liberation of a human being. Each tends to isolate some segment of the tradition and proclaim it as the authentic yoga. But at bottom, it's basically a spiritual discipline with techniques that are associated with how do you release yourself from the bonds of the phenomenal order, what gets you caught up in the material plane. Yoga has its own logic, and through constant application of your efforts in the process of planning and carrying out, you develop spirituality. And then all other elements of life fall into place. You can say you get centered and you begin to flow. So one more thing to remind everybody about what I call the religion of healthy mindedness. It's best expressed if you've never read Walt Whitman's writings. He never spoke depreciatingly or disparagingly against anyone or anything. If you read his works, his language and his writings were a systematic expulsion of all contractile elements. All natural objects and people had a charm for him. And his passion had a mystic ontological element that suffused all his words and persuaded anyone who listened to him that ultimately life and death were divinely good. So now is your point of attraction. If something gets your attention, it becomes a real part of you. Shake loose the importance of the merely factual. Just because it's true doesn't mean it necessarily deserves our attention. And remember, in spirit there's no lack. I believe that failure to realize spirit at any point of our life is both why we complain, and even things like delay is nothing but failure to realize present good. I hope that that message penetrates into your heart space and enables you to live joyously, happily, and serve as appropriately. See you tomorrow.